I walked into my apartment on our 7th anniversary, arms full of champagne and roses, ready to surprise my husband. Instead, I found him tangled in our bed with his secretary. That image destroyed me, but nothing compared to what he did next. 3 months later, Mark stood in a Chicago courtroom and called me sterile in front of everyone, claiming I'd ruined his dreams of fatherhood. He smiled like he'd already won. But when the judge opened that DNA envelope, his face went white. He had no idea what was coming. 7 years. That's how long I'd been married to Mark Hendris. 7 years of building a life in our Chicago apartment, 2 successful careers, dinners with friends, weekend trips to Lake Michigan. I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. I was so incredibly wrong. October 15th was our anniversary. I had planned everything perfectly, left work early, stopped at the florist for his favorite white roses, and grabbed a bottle of Dom Pérignon from the wine shop on Michigan Avenue. I was practically floating as I rode the elevator up to our 10th floor apartment, imagining his surprise and the romantic dinner I'd reserved at Alinea. I turned my key quietly, wanting to sneak in, maybe catch him off guard in a cute way. The apartment was dim. Soft music drifted from the bedroom. I smiled, thinking maybe he'd planned something, too. I set down the champagne and walked toward the bedroom, roses still in hand. The door was halfway open. And that's when I saw him, with Claire, his 26-year-old secretary, in our bed. On our anniversary. I must have made a sound because Mark's head snapped toward me. For one frozen second, we just stared at each other. Then, instead of scrambling or apologizing, he looked annoyed. Annoyed that I'd interrupted. "Emily," he said, climbing out of bed with zero urgency and reaching for his pants. "This isn't what it looks like." I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Claire pulled the sheet up, her face flushed, but not embarrassed. Almost defiant. "Actually," Mark continued, his voice cold and steady, "maybe it's time we talked. I've been meaning to tell you, this isn't working anymore." The roses fell from my hands. Petals scattered across the hardwood floor like drops of blood. "On our anniversary," I whispered. He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "The date doesn't matter, Emily. We done. You'll hear from my lawyer." I don't remember leaving. I don't remember calling my sister, checking into a hotel, or crying so hard I threw up. The next few days blurred together in a haze of shock and disbelief. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. Mark claimed irreconcilable differences. He wanted the apartment, half my retirement, and was fighting me on everything. His lawyer was brutal, personal, relentless. Then, one morning in my sister's guest bathroom in Evanston, I took a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately. I was pregnant. I sat on that cold tile floor and cried for an hour. The baby wasn't Mark's. It was from a brief relationship I'd had during a separation, 8 months earlier, before Mark and I reconciled. I'd never told him about it. Now, sitting there with that positive test in my shaking hands, I felt joy and terror in equal measure. I was going to be a mother, but I also had to face Mark in divorce court. And knowing him, knowing how cruel he'd become, I knew he'd use anything against me. I just didn't know how low he'd go. The Cook County courthouse smelled like old wood and anxiety. I'd been inside before for work, but never like this. Never as a defendant in my own divorce. My lawyer, Janet Rodriguez, squeezed my arm as we walked through the metal detectors. "Remember," she said quietly, "stay calm, no matter what he says." I nodded, though my hands were trembling. I was 12 weeks pregnant now, barely showing, my secret still hidden beneath a loose black dress. I hadn't told anyone except my sister and my doctor. Definitely not Mark. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Dark wood paneling, rows of benches, an American flag in the corner. Mark was already seated at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, an expensive shark named David Kruger. Mark wore his Navy suit, the one I bought him for his promotion. He didn't look at me once. But Claire did. She was sitting right behind him, in the gallery. The audacity made my stomach twist. She wore red lipstick and a smug little smile. Judge Patricia Walsh entered, and we all stood. She looked to be in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked tired, like she'd seen 1,000 cases just like ours. I prayed she'd see through Mark's lies. "Mr. Hendris," the judge began after the preliminaries, "you may present your testimony, Mark stood, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Then he looked straight at the judge. Your Honor, he began smoothly, I need you to understand why this marriage failed. My wife is barren. The word hit me like a slap. Barren. In a courtroom full of strangers, he called me barren. For 7 years, Mark continued, voice dripping with false sadness, I begged Emily to see specialists. I wanted children. I wanted a family. But she refused. She prioritized her career at that non-profit over our future. And when I finally convinced her to get tested, we discovered the truth, she can't have children. She's medically sterile. Gasps rippled through the gallery. My face burned. Janet gripped my wrist under the table. Steady, she whispered. But Mark wasn't done. I'm only 34, Your Honor. I deserve a chance at fatherhood. Emily denied me that chance. She wasted the best years of my life, knowing she could never give me what I needed. That's why I'm asking for a fair division of assets. I need to start over. I need to build the family she refused to give me. He sat down, looking satisfied, righteous. Claire leaned forward and touched his shoulder, all faux sympathy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout that he was lying, that I was pregnant right now, that he was the one who destroyed everything. But I didn't. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state. Technically, his reasons didn't matter. Except they did. Character mattered. His public humiliation mattered. And Judge Walsh was watching everything with sharp, intelligent eyes. Mrs. Hendris, she said, turning to me. Do you wish to respond to these allegations? I stood on shaking legs. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, then dropped. Not yet. I wasn't ready to reveal that card. Your Honor, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The moment before everything changes. My husband is lying. But I have evidence that will prove exactly who destroyed this marriage. Mark's expression flicked, just for a second, I saw where he crossed his face. Proceed, Judge Walsh said, leaning back in her chair. Janet, my attorney, nadie that me. This was it. Time to fight back. I took the press and walked to the witness stand. The courtroom felt impassively quiet. Every eye was on me, including Mark's cold, calculating stare. But I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I wasn't the broken woman who'd found him in bed with his secretary anymore. I was a mother now, protecting my future and my child. Your Honor, I began, keeping my voice steady. Mark clumsily refused to have children. That's false. The truth is, Mark has been having an affair with his secretary, Claire Donovan, for at least 18 months. Claire's face went red. Mark's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Tesare vasles accusations meant to. I have evidence, he interrupted. Janet was already approaching with a folder. Text messages recovered from Mark's phone during discovery, he explained. Photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing dinners, gifts, and weekend trips to Milwaukee, while he told me he was at conferences. Judge Walsh took the folder, flipping through it slowly. Her expression remained neutral, but I saw her jaw tighten. Mark shifted in his seat, whispering urgently to his lawyer. These communications are explicit, Your Honor, he continued. They show a clear pattern of infidelity dating back to March of last year, and they show Mark discussing his plans to divorce me in order to be with Miss Donovan. Your Honor, his lawyer, Kruger, said smoothly. Mark Hendris .Instead a relationship developed, but it was only after the marriage was effectively over, due to Mark Hendris' inability to conceive. It was good. I had to give him that. But it was better. Actually, he said, about that. Janet handed me another document. Your Honor, Mark Hendris presented testimony claiming I'm sterile. To support his narrative, I believe he is prepared to submit medical records. Kruger hesitated, then nodded. We have a documentation from Dr. Stephen Pierce at Northwestern Medical, stating that Mark Hendris has severe fertility issues that could prevent natural conception. Janet stepped forward. Your Honor, we'd like to challenge the authenticity of those documents. We contacted Dr. Pierce, and he has no record of ever treating Emily Hendris. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Mark's face darkened, his hands clenched into fists. Your Honor, he said, my voice cutting through the noise. I need to say something. Ito cabres. I'm pregnant. Silence. Deafening silence. Mark exploded. That's impossible. You're lying. Or it's not mine. Quiet. Hudhevalskavel cracked like thunder. Stiturned tome, her expression unreadable. Mrs. Hendris, this is a serious clam. I have medical documentation from Mayo/HYN, Your Honor. I'm 12 weeks alone. Clearly, I'm not sterile. I met Mark's eyes. He looked like he wanted to kill me. And you were right about one thing, Mark, he said softly. This baby isn't yours. His mouth opened, but he kept going. I'm not required to disclose the father's identity, and he won't. But what he will disclose is this. Janet handed me the final piece of our strategy. Your Honor, during discovery, we obtained Mr. Hendris' medical records through proper legal channels. We'd like to submit them as evidence. On what grounds? Krueger demanded. Because, he said calmly, Mark has been sterile since he was 23 years old. He has a congenital condition that makes natural conception impossible. It's known this since before we got married. He lived me for 7 years. The courtroom erupted. Mark shouted incoherently. Clare looked stunned, her hand over her mouth. Krueger frantically lifted through papers, clearly blindsided. I'm requesting DNA verification, Your Honor, he continued. Not to prove paternity of my child, but to prove that Mark Hendris has been lying under oath. To prove a forged medical documents to from me. To prove that everything I said today was meant to humiliate and defraud me. Judge Walsh held up the sealed envelope containing Mark's DNA test results. I reviewed this evidence in chambers, she said. We're taking a 15-minute recess. But he could see it in her eyes, she already knew the truth. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, Janet beside me, my hand resting on my stomach. Inside, my baby was growing, unaware of the battle being fought for our future. Down the hall, I could hear Mark arguing with his lawyer, his voice echoing off the marble walls. Clare had left. The moment I mentioned Mark's sterility, she grabbed her purse and walked out, her heels clicking rapidly toward the exit. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She knowingly participated in destroying my marriage. Whatever lies Mark had told her, she'd chosen to believe them. I'll rise. We filed back into the courtroom. Judge Walsh sat behind her bench, the envelope open before her. Her expression was granite. Mr. Hendris, she said, her voice cold enough to freeze Lake Michigan. I reviewed the medical evidence submitted by both parties. The DNA analysis confirms that you have a congenital condition resulting in azoospermia. You've been medically sterile since your early 20s, well before your marriage to Mrs. Hendris. Mark's face had gone completely white. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Furthermore, Judge Walsh continued, the medical documents you submitted, claiming Mrs. Hendris is sterile, are fraudulent. Dr. Pierce has confirmed they never treated her, and the signature on those documents is false. That's perjury, Mrs. Hendris. That's fraud. And in my courtroom, that's criminal. Your Honor, I can explain. You lied under oath. You forged medical documents. You publicly humiliated your wife with false accusations of infertility, while knowing you were the sterile party. You wasted this court's time and resources. Her gavel struck 11, sharp and final. I'm ruling in favor of Mrs. Hendris. She will return the marital home, 70% of shared assets, and you will pay alimony for 5 years. That's not fair. Mark shouted, standing up. She's pregnant with another man's child. That's not fair, Mrs. Hendris, Judge Walsh shot back, is lying to your wife for 7 years about your inability to have children. That's not fair is committing adultery and then trying to destroy her reputation in court. Mrs. Hendris' pregnancy is irrelevant to this case. You have no claim to that child. And frankly, after what I've seen today, you have no business claiming to want fatherhood at all. Judge Walsh turned to me. Mrs. Hendris, I'm also recommending the States Attorney investigate Mr. Hendris for perjury and fraud. You might wish to file a civil suit for emotional damages as well. He added, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. This court is adjourned. He walked out of that courthouse into the bright October sunshine. Reporters had gathered, somehow already aware of the dramatic case, but Janet guided me past them without a word. Mark was still inside, probably being read his rights. That night, alone in my sister's guest room, the room that had become my sanctuary, I lay in bed with my hand on my belly. My baby moved for the first time, a flutter like butterfly wings. It's just you and me, I whispered. But we're going to be okay. Better than okay. 3 months later, I moved back into our apartment. My apartment now. Mark's things were gone. Claire was gone. The past was gone. All that remained was the future. And it was finally, beautifully mine.